Hi, everybody. Victor here. It's nice to see you all here. I'm with Sarah again, and we will talk about money transferring, which is a topic that many of you guys requested. Many questions usually comes up, and it's the second webinar that we are hosting together, Sarah. Really, really excited.
I know, it's great. It's great to be back with you.
Yeah, certainly. And
And,
we'll probably
now
have
this
many
time
more. So
though, I come broadcasting from Lisbon now.
exactly, we're very close now. I'm in Porto now, so yes, guess like 3 hours drive. So it's fairly we're fairly close to each other. And guys, really, I appreciate you being here. We will just wait for a while for people to join in. We're supposed to start like something around 7:05, so people can join in. And yes, if you guys could let us know where you are from, where you are based now, that would be fantastic. I can see that we have many people from the United States already. I guess all of you guys who has sent messages are in the United States. That's amazing. Many people from the United States planning to move to Portugal. I can see some familiar faces over here as well. I can see Kent. It's nice to nice to see you again. It's nice to know that you guys are interested in this topic. It's a very important one. Actually, it's a very important stage in the process of moving to Portugal. So yes, done from New York City. We have Gregory from Miami. It's nice to know that we have plenty of people, plenty of Americans here.
Let us know where you want to move to as well. That's always interesting.
Yeah. So Sarah is in Lisbon. I'm in Porto. So we are covering like big cities in Portugal.
I
and
actually I did the train from Porto to Lisbon, and that's a lovely journey because that goes along the coast. So really pretty, but then you go through loads of different towns and you get to see them as well. It's a nice way of doing it.
I love to go to Lisbon because I usually go by train, and I agree with you. It's so relaxing. Checking
Mhm.
the view. It's I try to just appreciate the moment that I'm in the train, and I really love going traveling by train or even by car. It's like a moment where I can just relax, try not to think about work at least for these few hours, and it's always good. So
I thought
can't
the road systems are very good certainly in Portugal. Driving the main sort of motorways, very similar to the UK and America, and even I mean obviously there's smaller obviously villages, but even when you come off, there's still it's a very good road system.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's so good. The roads, you don't even feel that you are driving. This goes like so natural. We have to just
Less
pay it.
traffic, definitely less traffic.
Yeah. But when we are on the road, just be aware not to go too fast. I tend to like Lila always calls for my attention that I'm driving too fast, so I try to slow down, not to make anything stupid. So can't seem to don't have video or sound. Maybe um, it's if you go to the settings, you can okay you can see what's the problem. And guys, if you have any
Mhm.
problem with the video or sound, just let us know. Maybe it's from our end here, but it seems you guys can listen to us, so it's good. Yeah, the toll road. Yes, yes, Alana. So there are the downsides here in Portugal as well. There are many. You have to pay, I guess, close. When I go to Lisbon, I have to pay close to 40 euros in tolls. But
Oh gosh,
yeah, it is what it is.
maybe that's why the roads are very quiet.
Yeah, there's no magic.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So yeah, we will start the presentation, and you guys feel free to ask as many questions as you want to. We will try to cover them in the end. We will just have some time to go to the Q&A. And now let me share the slides with you. Let me see. Oh no, not this. I guess this is this one. Okay, this one and this. Oh my. Okay. Seems that I got it. Okay, guys. So yeah, I'm trying to. I'm not like very tech savvy, so if I do some mistakes here, I'm really sorry for that. And yeah, today we will talk about the like very basic about the sending money to Portugal and from Portugal and Spain as well. As many of you know, here we in Viv Europe we expanded the business to Spain as well. So we have some clients that will require these services as well, because it's not only for Portugal but Spain as well, and probably many more countries. Sarah will be able to talk about the specifics. And but yeah, so we will talk about the beginner's guide to sending money to and from Portugal and Spain. So yeah, so here I am. I guess some of you know me already. I'm Victor Queiroz. I'm Brazilian. I moved to Portugal 6 years ago. Me and my wife. Uh, I was just talking to Sarah before going live that we decided not to bring so many things to Portugal, because there's always that there's always a headache in the shipping services, tax you have to pay. So we really started from the ground here. We bought everything here in Portugal. We just moved to Porto because when we first moved to Portugal, we decided to go to a smaller city in Braga. So once again, we are just like Sarah. We are unpacking so many things, but in the end, it's always worth it. This hard job of building everything from the ground. I'm the CEO of Viv Europe. This is a company that helps people move into some countries in Europe, and Portugal and Spain are one of those. We deal with the whole process, the paperwork, tax number, bank, you name it. So the whole relocation process, real estate. We have people to guide you guys in this process that can be kind of time consuming. Sometimes it's more, there's some complexities, but we try to make it as much straightforward as possible to you guys. And I've been working in this field for the last 13 years, so I kind of know one thing or another about this process. And I was one of the founders of Viv Europe. So, and I do like the entrepreneurial, life. This is a topic that I'm always in touch, and I think that's even more being here in Portugal. We can see there's so many opportunities here. So it was such a like less significant country in some like years ago. There was this booming of people, and with this booming, there's always new opportunities. So I consider myself an entrepreneur, and I live in Porto. I'm loving living here, coming from such a small place as Braga. Now being able to choose where to eat, where to go to I don't know, movies or anything. There's so many options now, and so I'm loving this new life here in Porto. But yeah, this is me, and I will let my dear friend Sarah introduce herself.
Hi, so my name is Sarah, as
Hello,
Victor's
Sarah.
introduced me. I work for Spartan FX. We're a currency specialist. I've been doing this, not with Spartan FX, but over the years, for 17 years in this industry, dealing with initially clients in the UK that were moving all over the world, especially to sort of America, Canada, New Zealand, and now dealing with a lot of customers that are moving to Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, especially American customers. We deal with customers all over the world, whether you're from Canada, the UK, Australia, moving to Europe and other countries. But I think for the purposes of obviously this talk, we're talking about specifically moving to Portugal and Spain, which there's a lot of similarities really from a moving money perspective. And we'll probably focus a little bit more on really Americans and the US dollar. But as I said, we can deal with other currency pairings as well. As Victor says, I do live in Lisbon. I actually just moved this week. So it's all very exciting, lots of boxes unpacking. What I would say to people is that, I'm obviously, this is my job and I am totally au fait with the system, can move money myself. But I actually use one of the dealers in the office. Steve is my dealer. I call him up, I get him to book a rate, and I get him to transfer the money for me. It's not that I'm not capable of doing it myself, but with everything going on, it really is one less thing to worry about. I've got a long list, as you all have, of things that you need to research, things that you need to do, especially at different times, whether it be applying for your visa, going to get the visa, moving. There is a long list of things, and sometimes it's just easier to pick up the phone and get someone else to do it, and that's what I did myself, and I found that was really easy. So we're going to touch on really the beginner's guide, is things that people haven't thought of. The way I kind of explain it to people is, I hear a lot of people talk about using financial advisors to manage your money. Is very similar. You're looking at using an expert to help manage moving your money from one country to another, whether that be on price or exchange rate movements, as we'll talk about the process as well. It's just another element of the journey of your move to Spain or Portugal, where it's worthwhile looking into using a specialist or an expert.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. So yes, let's start. And just before starting, guys, so as you know, this will be a recorded webinar, so you'll have access to it later. I can see that people that are asking about it, so don't worry. We will also, of course, send our contact information in the end, so that you can reach out to us. Um, so yeah, so Sarah, if you prefer, you can go ahead. I can jump on in the while we go.
Excellent. I thought I would just touch quickly on why you need to move money. We talk about money and payments, but the reality is often it's left to the last minute, or it's really when you need to make a payment. And why would you? You get asked to make a payment when you're paying, say, for your lawyer's fees. You ask to make a payment to a removal company. You get an invoice. You might be renting a property. You might need to put a number of months up front. Or then it's on a monthly basis. You might choose to buy a property, whether that be now. Some people are choosing to do that because of the price of the monthly rental. Others are choosing to rent for 6 to 12 months and then might be looking to buy. You may be moving savings. You may just be moving a small amount to top up your local account, or when you open your bank account in Portugal or Spain. Really anywhere where you're either given an invoice or a bank account details IBAN where you'll need to make a payment, that's where we'll be able to help move your money from your account in, say, the US, Canada, UK, over to Spain or Portugal, whether it be your own account or a third-party account.
Yeah, another thing to consider here is that you will probably you need to have money in Portugal or Spain for these activities, but also I know that many of you are planning to really move to Portugal, and you need to show that you have income, you have funds in Portugal to show for your visa application. So having a statement that shows that you have money here in Europe, in Portugal, can always help with the process. So this is kind of mandatory for you guys that are planning to move to Portugal.
Also, I know with Victor, when he helps customers open a bank account, there's a small minimum that then customers will need to put into the account as well. So again, we're not necessarily talking about always large sums of money, but there's money here, there, and everywhere that needs to be moved for certain different reasons with your move to Spain or Portugal.
Exactly. Perfect.
The way I sort of explain to people or kind of are going to talk about it today is breaking down really into 4 steps. We talk about price, so that's the price on the day that you're buying your money at. Exchange rate movements, so we're going to talk about fluctuations and how that's going to affect the price, and also compliance and the process of actually moving money from one country to another.
Yeah, amazing.
So the price, what we're talking about is that often, again, because people leave it to last minute, people call up, whether it be to the bank or to us, and say, what's the price that you can offer? What's the exchange rate? And what's that cost going to be to me? Now, the things to bear in mind is that your first protocol will be your bank. Don't always assume it's the cheapest option, so do always check. Some banks are better than others. So, for example, we know that someone like Bank of America, they charge about 5%. Wells Fargo tend to be a bit more expensive. Chase and Charles Schwab tend to be a bit cheaper than the other two. So again, it's always worthwhile double checking, but they're still not always your cheapest option. Sometimes banks will say, we'll do the transfer for free. What they may mean is that there's no transfer fees, but it still will be in the exchange rate. So do watch out for that, because if you think you're getting it for free, then that's not the case. It is in the exchange rate. That's where they're taking their margin. And then what you'll find is that then when you arrives in the beneficiary or your bank account in Portugal or Spain, then you'll actually see how much they've charged you in the exchange rate. If you are doing comparisons, it is best to do it at the same time. The exchange rate is moving all the time. So we've had people that say, I've got a price, but I got it last week, I got it yesterday. It's really sort of, as you say, with technology, as soon as you get a price on something, it really then becomes redundant because the market's moving all the time. So if you are getting prices, it's always best to compare almost like for like or at a similar time to make sure that you're doing a direct comparison on that as well. The other thing to bear in mind with your bank is that even if you went into branch or you call them up on the phone and you've got a price, that they can't honour that price that they've given you on the phone or in branch. What happens is that when the money's sent, so that could be that day, it could be the next day if they've missed the bank cut-off points, when that money is exchanged, that's the rate that you will get. So the only thing to bear in mind is if you need a specific amount of money, whether it be paying for rent or especially if you're paying a third party, if it's to your own account, then it's not too much of an issue, but you're paying to a third party, if you're not 100% sure what the rate's going to be, then you may find that they get a little bit more if the rate's moved in your favor or the money's short. Now, if the money's short, then what are the repercussions? You're late on a mortgage payment, you're late on a deposit. Again, you want to give yourself enough time and make sure that that's not an issue and that you're getting the rate that you're quoted to help with that. But price really is only a small aspect of the whole process of moving money. And I think if anything to take away from this today is for you to realize there are other aspects and other things that can help you save money, and certainly other things that you need to research or do in advance of your move to Portugal or Spain.
Perfect. Thank you. Next one.
So the exchange rate movements, that's something that I do get people to realize, because often people don't realize how much of an impact it can have. This year alone, we've seen the euro US dollar move 3% at one point. Now on a 250,000 euro amount or property that you're buying, the difference is $8,000. I've seen last year when we've seen more rate movements, that difference was 32,000 US dollars. For some people, we had a client who about a month and a half ago, they transferred money out just under 300,000 euros, but they bought their euros back in September. Now, the difference between the 2 points, if they'd left it to the last minute and just done it a month and a half ago, the difference I think would have been just under 2,000 US dollars. So yes, you could say some rate movements, there's not a great lot of difference, but you're not going to know that. The problem is if you leave it to the last minute, then you can only get the rate that the market's at on the day, regardless of where it is. So it might be really good and you've lucked out and it's a really great rate of exchange, or the market might have moved against you and it's suddenly more expensive than maybe what you'd budgeted for. Whereas if you give yourself a little bit more time, it just gives you some more options. This is a bit cliche, but none of us have a crystal ball. So there is obviously an element of when we look back at historic rates, there is hindsight. But I think it's ultimately getting people to realize that these exchange rate movements can have a bigger difference. So where we've seen with clients is, yes, you can do a price against, an online provider, us, or the bank, and you might have saved some money. But the reality is, if you'd bought it a week or a month ago, you might have saved even more money. So it's something, again, just to bear in mind. And a lot of people that we speak to, your time frames, 12 months, 6 months, what we've seen clients do is that you can either buy euros in advance, even if you haven't got a bank account, buy a quarter of what you need, buy a half of what you need, and maybe that might help spread the risk. We've seen it where, we have seen the rate nearly touch parity, and we saw a lot of clients buy euros at that point. So again, maybe it's watching out for better rates of exchange and buying some euros then. It's also bearing in mind what's happening with the markets. The things that move the markets, obviously, we have no control. You've got your pandemic, you've got war, you've got natural disasters, but then you've got sentiment, what's coming out from the Federal Reserve, from the ECB, also what data is coming out, inflation data, the growth of an economy. That's what we're bearing in mind as to what could move the markets. At the moment, we're a bit back and forth, certainly with the Fed and the ECB, as to who's going to cut interest rates first. It's all basing it on inflation data. They want to see a little bit more consistent in it lowering. So 1 minute it looks like the Fed's going to do it, but then now they're not. Now it looks like maybe the ECB might do it first. Again, inflation data could come out and they push that back. So we're a bit back and forth on that at the moment. And again, that's obviously having a bit of impact on the exchange rate. So it's just trying to bear in mind in your time frames, what we think might happen, but also just helping you budget.
Yeah, and also Sarah, being an immigrant here in Portugal, if there's one thing that I regret is that I did not pay enough attention in these small details. When I came to Portugal, I still had to bring money from Brazil from time to time, and I would only bring money when I needed. So there was no planning. There was no, let's see the exchange rate. If this makes sense, bring now. It was just when it was needed, I brought money, and I know that I lost, much money on the exchange rate, on fees, for example, because I wanted to have it like very straightforward, like very quickly. So there was no planning, and sometimes people don't pay enough attention to this, and they can lose. Yeah, I agree with you. Lots of money in the exchange rate.
The other reason I wanted to put in this graph actually as a 5-year graph is because people, which again we're all guilty of, you're kind of looking at a little bit in small windows, but actually sometimes it's worthwhile looking back on the exchange rates, because what is a good rate? And sometimes looking back, we can see, yes, we have been lower at the end of 2022, But overall, we're still at fairly good levels to where we saw, back before sort of 2020. So again, it's sometimes worth looking back to see where the rate's been in comparison to where it is now, to sort of give you a bit more perspective that actually, is this a good rate? Where sometimes if you're only looking in a month's with 1 month, you might think, oh, it's not a good rate. But actually, if you look back over like 6 months, 12 months, it sometimes is actually a good rate. So again, it's looking at it like that. But as Victor said, if anything, it's just, if you haven't really thought about it before, definitely think about it again. Victor himself, we've spoken to the clients, 12 months down the line, and the things that they said is that they wish they'd thought a little bit more about how they move their money and a bit more about taxes as well.
Yeah, especially when they're bringing many amounts of money, buy a property, so it can cause like big impact in the end. Let's go to the next one. There you go.
So it's just to recap on some of the things I just touched on in the other slide, is that just reminding sort of, you could say to me, it's all well and true, but what are my options? And, some people think, well, I can't do anything because I've not got a bank account open in Spain or Portugal. Because if you do it with your bank, you've got to have somewhere to put the euros, or I don't have a beneficiary to pay. Doesn't matter. You do still have options. You can buy money as and when you need it, so you can leave it to closer to the last minute, not a problem. We can help you watch, you can do it yourself, you can watch the rate and see how it goes and buy as and when you need it, or we can hold euros on account for you free of charge. As I said, if you're buying all of them, quarter of them, half of them, again, to help spread that risk, because maybe the average rate that you're buying at is better than where it's been. The other option, which we'll touch on in a minute towards the end about buying property specifically, is that we have a function where you can fix the rate for a future payment. So we'll touch on that in a minute when we talk about buying property, because it's a very good tool to help budget.
Yeah, these options here. When I moved to Portugal, I didn't know that there was even possibility for not doing the exchange and receiving the money. I need to have a bank account here in Portugal, and the money would go like on the same day. So you would apply for it, you would send money, and for me, receiving this money like immediately and not being able to have more options was like, I guess it is the standard procedure. So many people don't know that there are many options, as you can tell. But yeah, it's like mind blowing knowing that there's so many other options as well.
Because I think also when you spoke about earlier that we did another webinar, our first webinar was about banking in Portugal, but very similar really, I think, to Spain as well, is that so for Americans, it can take a while to open a bank account. So this could be an option, if you need to pay third parties, or as we said, if you wanted to take advantage of the rate, it's a solution that you haven't got to worry about, I haven't been able to get this account, or it's taking longer to open my bank account. We have some clients that even when they've got their bank account open in Portugal or Spain, but they're still living in their own country, say America or Canada. And some people are not really au fait with the online banking system in Spain or Portugal and don't really want to do that or find it difficult. So again, it's another way of, you might not need to use your account straight away. You can make payments to third parties so that you don't have to go through that sort of pain of maybe not understanding. I mean, myself, I found it useful. I have a Millennium account in Portugal, and I found it really useful going into the branch and for the woman to sort of talk me through the app and explain it all and set everything up. Found that much easier than doing it myself, without their help. So if you're, again, have managed to set it up, but you're not here fully, then you might not be able to go into the branch and ask for help, and for them to go through it like that, it might be a little bit harder.
Yeah, and talking about banks here in Portugal, it's hard to predict how much time it will take to open one bank account. There's the bureaucracy here in Portugal, there's the compliance, and many clients, they decide to enroll to Spartan FX services because they needed to have the money here in Portugal for some reason. And this, like, it's a lifesaver. It's really a lifesaver, because if, like, you can lose a deal, a very important deal, if you rely only on banks. And it's not actually the timing to open bank account. It's not only related to the person's, nationality. There's even some random compliance there, that you can be the lucky one that will go through the whole full compliance, procedure. So it can take like 1 week, but it can take 3 months to open one bank account here. And having the option to go to another route and still make a way to do the deal that you need to do in time, it's really a lifesaver. And then
Actually,
I'm talking
that
about compliance here.
yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
compliance. Yeah.
Moving on to more compliance, but it is a thing, definitely. I mean, we're seeing more. I mean, it was very important and a lot of before, but I think since we've had COVID, they've been a bit more stricter, I think, and especially because I think more and more people have gone online because they couldn't get into their branches. So certainly security's increased. And what we're finding is that it's not only a case of banks are asking more questions around moving your money. I get it, even if I'm sending money to a friend. Are you sure? Are you definitely sure you know this person? And it makes you sort of question. I think my colleague, he had it sending it to his own account. They're like, are you definitely sure you want to send it? It's like, where's my own account? So yeah, I'm not sending it to a stranger. But in case of it's really, I think, to absolve any sort of liability on their end, that you've basically taken responsibility to send that. But it is legitimate. It's just a case of asking these questions, which can be quite intimidating, to be honest. So it is useful for, we know the kind of questions that clients get asked, which we can help with. But ultimately, where we see more of the compliance issues is that when you're moving money, especially larger sums, more paperwork is often needed. It's important that due diligence is really done up front, because what you find is that for some online providers, they don't do it up front, but then they do it before they'll release the payment, which then can delay your payment. We've had a client he came to us and needed to pay a deposit for a property. They'd used an online platform, and their money basically got stuck there for about 2 weeks. Fortunately, they had more money and were still able to make their payment deadline for the deposit on the property. Banks, again, they can take, the way that they send the money is a lot slower, so it can take about a week for that money to clear. Or it may be that the beneficiary bank might flag that payment. And again, what they're going to do is the beneficiary bank is then going to talk to your bank, which again is a little bit of a sort of snail mail approach, and that can take time. And that again, so what I would say is, if you're a person that's thinking about, or you leave it to last minute, please don't, because again, unfortunately, we can't sometimes know how quickly some banks can send money and how long they can take to release it at the other end. So again, it's giving yourself a little bit of time before you need to make the payment. We can send payments instantly, but some banks can hold the money for a day or two. So again, you don't want to be caught out by that. But again, compliance is a big thing now, especially on the larger amounts, or even on the smaller. If you're doing them on a regular basis, after so many, they then will flag and ask questions for compliance, and it can take a while. We had one client who they'd used their bank to buy a car. I think it must have been an issue in the way that the bank teller sent the money. The money eventually got returned back to their account in America, but in the meantime, they couldn't buy the car. So then they had to rent a car until they could manage to get the money over there. They finally came through us, and we sent the money instantly into the seller's account. But again, that money got returned to their account. We're often on the phone to bank tellers, certainly in the US, because they've never made an international payment before. They don't know what an IBAN number is. There's different ways of sending money. Some are quicker than others. So again, it's making sure they send it in the right way. And there's little things like that. Again, it's more if you've got payment deadlines to just kind of bear some of these things in mind. And this is where I go around sort of really the process is sort of all encompassing in that. It's not just, yes, we talk about price. Obviously, it's very important to save money, but often really the priority for a lot of people is meeting a payment deadline.
Yeah. And yeah, I totally agree, Sarah. And that is not only, creating the bank account, but after that, they have to activate your bank account, and that takes time as well. People sometimes they receive one email from the bank, they get very excited. Oh, my bank account was created. That's amazing. I have an IBAN, but they cannot use it. They have because the bank still needs to approve it. They'll go to compliance, and so it's all of that,
Yeah.
complicated situation. I can see here that Elana, she's mentioning that Millennium is impossible and Caixa was wonderful. From my experience, there is like Portuguese banks. It's hard to point out one that's better. I guess they fall over the same rule here. So the compliance rule, the bureaucracy, it's something that's very Portuguese. So I don't think that there is a best one. Certainly, there are those that I want to stay like as 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 far away from as I can because they're really not good. But there's, at least in my opinion, working with banks for close to 5 years here in Portugal, there's no perfect one. They will all have to follow some guidance here in Portugal that makes a little more complicated to work with.
The other thing is we haven't quite split sort of Portugal and Spain out because it is very similar. In some of the things that we're touching on, you'll encounter similar sort of issues. And I think also with moving money, you may have moved some money yourself and thought, I found it easy, I had no issues, or friends that have already done it and they had no issues. And I'm not saying that loads of people, like everybody will have an issue, but it's just as Victor said, it's, even with the banking, some people will breeze through and it'll be perfectly fine. But it's just to really report back on the experience we've seen with clients that have come to us. These are some of the issues that we've seen in our experience over the years of moving money, and also what clients have come to us and said that they've had problems with. So the key thing really is you might be fine, but what happens if you go to make a payment, whether it be for a property or a deadline or whatever, and there's an issue of any of the things we've touched on so far, and all of a sudden your money's not there, it's returned, you don't know where it is, or it's taking longer to get there and you've got a deadline to make, it's another stress. So again, try not to leave things to the last minute, so that if any issues do happen, then you've given yourself time as well, and just to bear some of these things in mind could happen to you. So the last one, again, is still sort of following on a little bit from the compliance side of things, again, about the process of moving your money from one country to the other, the things that we've seen. And the reason I bring it up is because we have seen it time and time again where clients have had to fly back to resolve the issue. Now, generally it's, say, for example, you're in America, you've done transfer, it's fine. Generally, it's probably all right because you're in the country. Maybe it's only because at this point you've only done smaller amounts. What happens if you move, or you've come on a scouting trip and all of a sudden you want to move an amount when you're here in Spain or Portugal, or where we've seen it where people rent for 6 to 12 months and then they suddenly decide, yep, I like it here, I want to buy a property, now I'm moving larger sums. Or maybe it's your savings, you've spoken to your financial advisor, you've decided to move some more money across. On the sort of large sums generally as well, or when you're here in Spain or Portugal, that's where you might find some more issues of actually the bank needs you to be there in branch to do something. Now, it can prove difficult or costly to fly back. So what research can you do beforehand? Again, this is about not necessarily using a service or any service, it's just doing your research, asking the questions, putting things in place just to make that easier. So things to bear in mind is we see it where maybe you'll need an international card reader. You can go in branch and get that. quite easily with some of the banks. It's just sort of I think it's a little kind of looks like a little calculator. Slot your card in and then you can pin. There's another kind of way of authorizing that payment. Do you need to fill any form in? I know that Charles Schwab, they get you to fill in a form if you want to make an international payment. We can help with that. Some banks in America don't do international payments. Some brokerage accounts don't do international payments. As we've touched on, some bank tellers don't even know what an IBAN is. So again, that can be a little bit difficult. Just make sure that you put everything in place. We've seen some people give power of attorney to friends or family, again, only if you trust those people. But there are things that you can do, whether it be, do you have other accounts with different banks? Maybe move the money to one of the banks that are better for this. If you don't, maybe open an account while you're in America, for example, with a bank that's better at this. Again, it's these sort of things that maybe you could do in advance to make sure that when you move, it's easier. Online banking, usually there's a limit. Here in the UK, I think it's about £10,000 a day. So again, if you're moving larger sums, that's something to bear in mind. Can you get that increased? We had one customer that their bank had a limit. They could only do 70,000 US dollars every 30 days, and they were trying to buy a property. It would have taken them probably about 4, maybe nearly 6 months to buy that property if given those restrictions. So again, this is not we're not talking about price, we're talking about process. Make sure you do your research. Who are you banking with? What procedures do they have in place? What do you need to do in order to make sure that you can move your money, especially when you're not there anymore?
Yeah, and it can be quite kind of scary when you create your bank account. You are not in Portugal yet, and you need to be here to receive your PIN number, and all the password and everything. So the only thing that you can do while you are not here in Portugal is transfer money. So you can transfer money to your IBAN, but you cannot operate the bank account. It feels like so. People feel that, like, what a situation. You can only transfer money, but I cannot pay anything with this bank account because I'm not in Portugal. So yeah, and it's a very unique situation where people feel that the system should work in a better way so that they can truly have a bank account. They don't. Until they come to Portugal, they can only see some bank statements that the bank will send once in a while, and that's all. It's it can
That's
be
really
quite.
interesting. So Victor's talking about the bank account in probably Portugal and Spain. So I've touched on obviously these things about moving your money from your home country. But as Victor said, when you've got your account in Portugal or Spain, it might not be fully activated. So you can transfer money in, which is great, but then I can't actually spend it or use it. So as you said, if you're then planning on making onward payments from that account, when your money's sat there, then it's not a possibility till it's fully activated. So it's little things like that again, people might not be aware of. You think, oh, my account's open, great, I'll start sending money into it, and then realize that my money's then stuck there. Because then maybe it's a case of, depending on what you're doing, is it better to pay to the third party, whether it be a lawyer or whoever, again, depending on the situation.
Yeah, and Sarah, Kent is asking, what is an international card reader? Is that kind of a gadget that you can put in your computer to read the card?
We used to, well, we have them in the UK, but also there's a couple of banks that I know in America have them. It's basically like, it looks like a very small calculator. It's got it's about a pocket size, and it's got numbers on, and then you stick your card in, and what happens is that you logging in, or you're doing say you want to do a transfer, a bit like a kind of what you do, or maybe like if you're buying something and they send a code to your phone, it's quite similar. It's that basically they give you something to type in on the pad, a number comes up and then you put that in. It's probably a bit more of an old school way of doing it. But what I generally find, which I'm quite surprised, is that actually a lot of banks in some places are still quite, their systems are still a little bit old fashioned. And I think that's the other thing to sort of bear in mind, that you're working against almost. So some banks will have that. Again, it's just about doing your research and asking the bank what they need. Not all banks will, but we've seen a couple that need that. Again, it's just that extra authorization for moving that money when you're not there.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I wanted to come back and put it as a separate thing about buying property. So again, it might not be relevant at this point for everybody. What we have seen, depending on your situation, that some people have chosen that, there's a lot of talk about house prices increasing, that maybe it's an ideal time to buy property. As I said, do bear in mind exchange rate movements, because what we saw, people talk about the house prices increasing, but actually if the exchange rate's increasing, then it is actually becoming even more expensive. Or if the exchange rate's moving in your favor, it helps negate some of that house price increase. The other thing as well is that depending on your situation, financial situation, and also whether you decide you're definitely thinking, right, I want to live in Spain and Portugal, sometimes obviously the monthly rental payments, it actually is cheaper to buy. So you may choose to buy in the beginning, or we see clients that have rented for 12 months. As part of the visa, you need to have a permanent address, then look to buy property at that point. So either way, it still be relevant, is again bearing in mind the exchange rate movements. Now, the thing is, when you're buying a property, you get given the price, even when you're trying to work out how much it's going to cost you, or you pay a deposit. Completion in the larger amount, the 90%, is usually 6, 8, 12 weeks time. Victor obviously will be able to shed more light on the sort of buying process. But again, that's a date that's in the future. Now, you're working out how much a property is costing you, but what happens if the rate moves against you? Again, as we've seen before, exchange rates can move. Now that property can either become more expensive or it can become cheaper. Now, the thing that we have is that we can actually fix the rate for that future payment. It's not a cost or a charge. We need 10% up front, locks in that exchange rate. You pay the remaining 90% when you need it, and we send all the money out on the rate that you've agreed today, for example. Now, the benefit really is that it's a good budgeting tool. You know exactly how much it's going to cost you. You're not going to be surprised by any exchange rate movements. Yes, you're locked in, so if the rate moves in your favor, you are stuck on that rate. But again, I would say it's more of a budgeting tool. You'll either be locking into a great rate of exchange, or you're protecting your risk there should it move against you. So again, it probably depends on your personality, what funds you've got available, your situation. Every customer is different. Some people choose to go down that route and have that peace of mind that they know how much it's going to cost them. Again, really depends on your budget. For others, they're happy to wait and see, and then we can look at monitoring the rate there as well.
Yeah, this is very important. Actually, buying properties is usually where, like, the stage where people really feel that this is an important topic, because transferring like the amount of money just to activate the bank account, okay, you have to pay more due to the exchange rate, but when it comes to buy a property, that's where you feel in your pocket. We have one client that talking about this bank procedures and bureaucracies, that he is also from the UK. He bought a property. He did not want to see the property, just thought that was the one that he was looking for. And we created the bank account here in Portugal, but yeah, we got to that situation where he was not able to transfer more than a specific amount. I guess it was 10,000 euros before coming to Portugal and signing the papers to be able to send more money. And he was planning to pay it as soon as he got. Actually, we were the one who had the power of attorney, so he would not be able to come to Portugal to buy the property. but we had this issue with the bank. He had the money in the bank, some money in the bank. He wanted to transfer more money. He couldn't. So the he really need to come to Portugal. That was the last thing that he wanted to do because he had some job to do. But that was the only option. He had to come to Portugal to buy the property. Otherwise, he would lose the business because there was a date scheduled for signing the deed here. And there's so many variables here to consider when buying a property. And if you are well prepared, know if you know beforehand that you will be able to trust your bank or not, you will certainly avoid so many headaches in the future. And yeah, he learned from the worst way how to deal with banks here in Portugal. And, it was a lack of, I think it was like a lack of preparation, but yeah, it so he had to change his plans, come to Portugal to buy the property. So yeah, you have to
We,
be aware.
you're right. The planning, what we've seen is that we've seen a client who's exchanged some euros and had them on account. They hadn't found a property yet, but they were coming over on a scouting trip. And what he said was, I just wanted to have the money ready so that if I found somewhere, I've got a deposit ready to go. Or we've got the money sat there in the euros, as Victor said, because if you've got issues with your bank account in Portugal or Spain and can't transfer on, you don't want to be in that position that you then have to fly here if you're not here or have issues. The euros are sat ready, waiting, and as soon as you give ahead to pay to go ahead, the money can be transferred instantly there. The other thing as well is that there is more tracking on the payment, so at all times we know where the money is. Now, in some situations in Portugal, I mean, usually when you buy a property, the payment goes to a lawyer escrow account. But there are instances where we've seen where the money will go direct to the seller. Now, having the extra payment tracking gives that little bit of peace of mind because we can tell you when the money's in the beneficiary account. So at least if they say, oh, we've not received your money, you can be like, yes, it is. It's definitely there.
Yeah. that yeah, that's a big thing, especially when you don't know how the system works here in Portugal. It's all new for you, knowing that he or she did receive the money, so it's peace of mind.
Absolutely.
And of course, avoid scams that can happen. Yeah, so now this is on me. I'm really, we know Viv Europe and Spartan FX. We've had a long-term partnership. We trust them. We recommend their services to our clients, and it's all we all always receive some good feedback. You can see, just look for their ratings, that they provide very, very good service. It's very personal. They always say, oh, I could speak to someone. It's not just an app where I just put the numbers and I don't have more information. It's very personal, and that's the thing that usually calls their attention. So there is a person there, so I can talk to someone, and things can happen. You never know. So it's good to have someone to rely on when you need to talk about a specific topic related to the to money transferring. And so we highly recommend Spartan FX. More and more we have this close relationship. And all about compliments. Really nothing that, of course, we are. Seems that it can seem kind of, I can be biased in a way, but really I feel very comfortable, and there is a responsibility on us to recommend other companies. And we feel very, like, no issues at all in recommending Spartan. Really,
Oh,
really happy.
appreciate that. But yeah, following on from Victor's wonderful comments there, we work quite closely because he has seen these issues with some clients previously, especially on the stuff that he touched on about the bank accounts and having a delay in getting that open, or it's open but it's not fully accessible, you can't do onward transfers. It just makes that whole process a little bit easier. Even when you've got your Portuguese or Spanish bank account open and it's fully functional and you're using it, doesn't make our service redundant, because you still will need to move money perhaps from your home country, from the US for example, into your Portuguese or Spanish bank account, and it's just making that process a little bit easier for you. As we've touched on, the account acts very similar to a bank account. We can receive payments, we can send payments to third parties, whether it be your lawyer, removal company, even the tax man, and hold those euros as we touched on. And that's why certainly consider buying euros, and why you might buy euros in advance, and just do a little bit more research and just factor it in as a consideration of when you're making a list of things to think about in advance, that this is something that you do. And if we can go on quickly to the next slide. It's just what we've touched on, but I just wanted to say it is the personal service, being able to contact us by telephone. You know, we get calls all hours. They're in their bank. That we've done video calls with bank tellers. We've helped us, answer some of the security questions. You're just sort of hand-holding through that process. And again, it's not to say that you're not capable in doing it yourself. I'm more than capable, but I know firsthand moving, it is very stressful and there's so many things to consider. It's just a case of someone to ring up. And the other things that we do that I haven't quite touched on, that again, whether you use our service or not, and that's the same with this whole presentation, all I'll do is for you to take away is to think about how I'm going to move my money, think about it in advance, think about the exchange rate movements and how that might affect those payments. Think about process, speaking to your bank. Who do you bank with? What processes do they have in place? What do I need to do before I move? Other things as well, when you are making payments, one thing to bear in mind is about IBAN numbers. So when you're given an IBAN number, whether it be, say, from your lawyer, you get sent by email. Now, there's two things can happen. One, human error. Someone in the law office puts down the IBAN number and there's a digit wrong. Or unfortunately, fraud. Emails are getting intercepted sometimes these days. And again, they're changing the bank account details. Now, what we do and what I recommend that you do is you always ring the beneficiary person and just double check those IBAN details. Because if it's a valid IBAN number and you go to your bank or you do it yourself on an online platform, as long as it's a valid IBAN, that money will go. So if it's not your lawyer's account because the digit's wrong or someone's intercepted it, it doesn't matter. The fact that it's a valid IBAN, it will go into that account. So you don't want it to go into the wrong account for any of those reasons. Always worthwhile ringing them up, just double checking and confirming that those details are correct. The other thing as well, similar sort of theme, is especially if you're sending large sums of money, if you've not paid to that account before, do a small test, because it's, to lose 100 euros is better than to lose 100,000 euros. So again, it's all around a similar sort of theme. We're just making sure that you're not sending it to the wrong account, because again, I joked earlier about sort of the questions that banks are asking around security and saying, you should definitely sure you want to make this payment to this account. The thing with that is that because you press the button and you do it, it is on you. So if it goes to that account, it can be quite difficult to get that money back once you've sent it if it is to the wrong account. So trying to do everything you can, again, in advance to make sure that you know that that is the right account. Check the beneficiary account details, do a small test before you send the larger sums of money.
That's good advice, really.
And the other thing as well is we've got these guides similar to sort of stuff I touched on today. Again, I don't know what everybody's time frame. Some people, again, doing research well in advance, which is a great thing to do. So you might not think, well, okay, I'm just not ready at this point to even be thinking about it, even though it's worthwhile thinking in advance. It's too far in advance. We have moving to money guides for Spain and Portugal. A lot of things that we've touched on this webinar as well. So you can ask for a copy of that. Or if you're in a position and you just want to have a chat, as Victor said, We have look at our 5-star reviews, but a lot of customers say that they found a friend in their dealer, or they're part of the Spartan FX family, which is lovely. So do get in touch and we can just have a free chat with you, even if it's just a case of asking us, saying, I bank with X, what are they like? Are they any good at making the transfers? And just help you with that process.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, right on time, like 8 p.m. here in Portugal. We will try to go over some questions very quickly as we did reach to the 1 hour threshold, but that's no problem. Let's just go over some questions here as promised. So we have one from Bauna that and she asks if for the digital nomad visa, in which country's bank account should your payments come, and if it's in your home country, what's the best way to transfer it to Portugal? So, talking about the visa very quickly, there's no specific place for the money to come from here. If you want to apply for the digital nomad visa, it's just that you have to prove that you receive enough amount of income to be, eligible for the visa. And in terms of what is the best way to transfer it to Portugal, we just spoke about some of these ways. And yeah, as we've mentioned, banks still there. You may find some issues here and there, and of course we have Spartan FX. We don't know where you are from and where is your income, related, the country that you receive the income, but certainly you can talk to Sarah to address this information.
Yeah, we should be able to help. Again, need to find out where you live and what currencies you have. But the accounts are in your name, so very similar to a bank. So when it gets transferred to your account in Portugal or Spain, or gets transferred to your a beneficiary, it will come up with your name. And that's the other thing that's good for an audit trail. So it will get put in your, say, Portuguese account, Spanish account, in your name, and then, as Victor said, then from there you can pay on for your visa, or have that proof that the money's in your account in Portugal or Spain, but we can help you get it there.
Perfect. So let me see here. So we have one from Loretta. How do direct deposit work for passive income? Another one related to visa, and just going very quickly on this one. Direct deposits nowadays here in Portugal are not considered passive income. So just having deposits and funds in your bank account doesn't mean that you receive passive income. So there must be other documents that can prove that the source is actually passive income. You don't have to work to get to this income on a regular basis. We have one from Nancy. Can you recommend a good, safe financial advisor or a law firm in Portugal to help me throughout all this? For the law firm, we can refer some to you guys. You can always send me an email and we can see, your needs and direct you to some of our partners. I don't know, Sarah, if you know a financial advisor that you trust.
Yep, I do, definitely. If you email in, I think my details will be in the chat. Email in, and we can definitely make recommendations.
Yeah, I guess let me just try to share our contacts over here. Oh my, hope I don't mess it up. Okay, so I guess the next one, yes, is our contacts. Let's see if I can share this slide with you guys. This one. Oh yeah, perfect. Next one, where is Spartan FX located? In Portugal?
Yes and no. So our head office is in the UK, but it doesn't matter because we deal with clients all over the world. The time difference doesn't matter. And also the way that we send money, we can do it internationally from wherever. I am actually based in Lisbon myself. But again, a lot of the times we're speaking to people when they're in the home country. So when you're in America, when you're in Canada, when you're in the US, in Australia, Switzerland, all over the world, we can deal with you. So it doesn't matter that we don't have an office in your home country to deal with you. It just means that we can be then flexible. We can take calls by WhatsApp. We can do video calls with you. When you book a transfer, it has to be done over recorded telephone lines, but we can, as I said, still take calls in various different ways in order for you to get in contact with us or get to know us.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. So there are only three last ones. So we have one from Alex, and I guess he asked this one while you were talking about, Sarah, the how hard can it be to reverse a transfer that was sent to a person or to someone that was not the person that the person wanted to send first place. Is it possible to reverse this transaction?
It depends. It's a bit of a case by case basis. But there's instances where we've seen that it's been difficult because essentially, if you, so say for example, you did it through your bank, you've authorized that payment and you've said, yes, I'd like to send it to that person, and it's gone into their account. There may be processes I think the bank has in place that you can try and contest and say that it's gone to the wrong account. But the problem is that you've authorized that payment to go to that account. So it can be tricky to get that money back, or it can take a long time because, again, as we know, the processes in a bank, for example, are quite slow. So I would say definitely check, because it can be very difficult. And we've seen with some customers that have come to us and they've done it through their bank and it's gone to the wrong account and they haven't been able to get the money back. So I say it's case by case, but we have seen it where they haven't, which is why we do that sort of due diligence of ringing small tests just to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So going to the final two questions, we have one from my friend Daniel. And these questions, they come quite often. A comparison between Spartan FX, Revolut, Wise. And he asks a first small amount for like rents, if it makes sense to use Spartan or these other companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a service for everyone, and some of it is personal preference. So, for example, we don't have a debit card linked to our account. So if that's something you're traveling and you need that, then maybe Revolut or Wise is very good for that. Smaller amounts, Wise is very good for that as well. I think it's a case of definitely sort of on some that are maybe larger, maybe over sort of 10,000, where you're looking at where exchange rates can make more of a difference and there's more maybe potential compliance questions that are related to the payment. Again, it's personal preference. A lot of our customers tend to want to do it over the telephone, so then that's the service for them. They can do it on our online system, but some prefer to just do that themselves. So I think it really depends on you as a person, to what you're comfortable with. Sometimes people find it easy just to do small amounts even through us, and then they get to know us. Others have been using Wise for smaller amounts and then come to us and do us with the larger amounts. I think certainly the thing that I would look at around sort of certainly like is the security of funds. So with sort of, I know that Revolut's been in the press a little bit more lately with that, but all of the money with us is protected. So if you've usually with some accounts, it's a pooled client account and maybe only 85,000, I think, equivalent is protected, but with us all the money's protected. So again, on the larger sums, there's slightly more protection in place for larger sums of money through us. Again, it's just checking that people have the right licenses in place. So I said, although we're a UK company, majority of our private clients are based in America because we've got the licensing, which is through FinCEN, and we've got the money transmitter licenses to deal with everyone in all the states in America. But again, I think it's probably around security of funds and a little bit of personal preference, maybe on the sort of smaller amounts. But we generally see anyone that's used Revolut, it's generally a little bit for travel with a card, some smaller amounts, and then have come to us for the larger amounts.
Yeah, makes sense. And for the last one, and I guess this one's for me, Gregory asks, it appears that I can open a millennium account online. Will this account be acceptable for the D7? Certainly, it's a bank account. If you are able to transfer money to the bank account, that's your money in a Portuguese bank account. So the answer is yes. The only issue is the not an issue, but the possibility is that the process of opening the bank account can take more time than if you were to use another kind of service. And so yeah, it's the procedure. So it's the process that takes place. But yeah, if you're able to open the bank account, it can certainly be used for the D7 visa. And that's all. Yeah, we were able to close it like little over 8 p.m. So it's always good to reach out to this timing, and I'm really happy having you guys here with us till this time. Really appreciate it. You have our contacts on your screen. Feel free to reach out to us. It will be really a pleasure to speak to you guys. And obviously, thank you, Sarah, again for being here with me. It's always a pleasure being with you. And as I mentioned, this is like the second one, but many more will come.
Absolutely. If you've got any questions, obviously please get in touch, and obviously we can cover other things on the webinars. As I said, obviously it'd be great to speak to you, have a free chat with us, and just see if this is a service for you and see how we can help and we can get to know you. But even if you don't use us, as I said, just take away some of those things that I've talked about, for you to just bear that in mind when you're moving money.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.